Welcome. Welcome back, you guys. It is a gorgeous day outside, and I'm, of course, Michael of Michael Claire to Arts. And thank you for clicking on this video. Today we're going to be doing something not too extended. I've been doing some longer videos recently, 45 minutes, an hour, and stuff like that. So we're going to try not to get there. But I'm going to be doing some inking and color application inside Clip Studio Paint and Photoshop. I did a couple sketches a while back of a Yeti / Bigfoot creature, and it was themed around Christmas time, and I really enjoyed doing those, and I played some color in them, and I posted them on social media, blah blah blah. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be cool to show the guys over there on YouTube what I do whenever I apply color. Now I've shown this in numerous other videos, and there's a lot of programs out there that you can utilize. You can use Photoshop, you can use Clip Studio Paint, you can use Sketchbook Pro, you can use Krita, you can use Medibang. I typically will use Clip Studio Paint for inking and color, and then I'll transition over to Photoshop. Now, I do love Photoshop because I have a ton of brushes. I like the rendering engine and the fact that it uses layers, so that's really cool. But I also, I use Clip Studio Paint. That was a tongue twister. Clip Studio Paint as well, and I just wanted to show you guys how I apply color. It's quick and dirty, and sometimes I think that, some of the YouTubers and illustrators really don't explain the process of how they use the program. But I'm going to go ahead and do that. Hopefully you won't get too bored, because illustrating a drawing it takes a long time. Let's be real. They do a lot of time lapse, and I will be doing time lapse because, again, it takes time. Drawing takes time. So let's go ahead and get started, and hopefully you'll enjoy the process. And I'm going to be working on the Microsoft Laptop Studio Pro, Surface Laptop Studio. Yes, Surface Laptop Studio. And it's not their higher end or anything like that. It's just one of their, mid-range computers. I always like to throw out there what tools I'm using, just to give you context. Okay, so enjoy the process. Okay, so here we go. I'm currently in Clip Studio Paint, and I'm showing you my original sketch. This was just the doodle that I did, and then I progressed on to my fine line. Fine line took roughly 30 minutes or so, not too long. And after I get that fine line done, I utilize this program to do what's called color blocking. A lot of people do value studies and color studies. I do those as well, but for this particular exercise, I went ahead right into color because I had a pretty clear vision of exactly what I wanted to do for this particular illustration. Now, if you look over there on the left-hand side, you see a myriad of different tools, and one of the tools that I currently have selected is the lasso fill. And that's going to be where that little protractor item is on the left-hand side above the A. And actually, it's two above that. That's the one I have selected, is the lasso fill. I was thinking of something else. But in the lasso fill, you basically have the lasso tool and a color selected in that box on the left-hand side at the very bottom, where it shows something very similar to Photoshop, the little color windows. And whenever I have the color selected in there, I can go in and whatever I draw in with the lasso fill, it fills in the color. I mean, it's really quick, and occasionally I'll do some detail work like you just saw with the eraser. I'll add a layer and I'll start stacking the colors on top of each other. And in this case, I wanted a nice round shape in the background to kind of separate him out. Again, to have that contrast between the cool green and that warm yellow, and you'll see that here as I finish things up. Clip Studio Paint's strength really lies, I believe, in the color application and inking process. Now, it does have quite a few layer transparency modes similar to Photoshop, Over on the right hand side, in that small area where the layers are at the very top, you'll see right now currently the layer transparency mode is normal, but it does have a myriad of different transparency modes, like I said, very similar to Photoshop, and you can lock the transparency of each layer, meaning whenever you lock that in, then you'll basically draw on that layer and it will only draw inside of the color of the layer that you're on, which is really convenient. Again, very similar to Photoshop. And I have a buddy of mine, Brian Allen, of Flyland Designs. He's a really prolific illustrator for pinball machines, and he's done quite a few character designs and t-shirt designs, and he's really good at inking and drawing and just creating incredible worlds. And what I like about him is he uses Clip Studio Paint, I would say probably 85 to 90% of the time exclusively. And he's really great at, like I said, streamlining down exactly what I'm doing. You know, I use Clip Studio Paint in a very narrow way. He has actually developed methodologies to expand you know, the parameter base of the program, and he's just really great at doing that. And as well as he offers a myriad of brushes for sale on his website. Just look up Brian Allen, BrinAllen, and you'll see exactly what he's about. Like you see right now, I've locked the transparency of that layer. You see the little area again on the right hand side where the layers are, and if I draw outside of the color, it will only stay within inside the confines of that particular layer. It's not creating a layer mask. A moment ago you saw me bring up the initial reference of this particular character that I've been developing, and I want to keep things consistent across the board, so if you see one of these little guys pop in every once in a while, that's exactly what I'm doing. Referencing the color. So again, keeping that color consistency. As you see, the subject matter is the Yeti. He's got a shirt on and a hat, and I've done quite a few iterations of this character seasonally. So seasonally being Christmas time, I love Christmas time, and last season, whenever Christmas was in full effect, I did this guy in quite a few different poses and got a real feel for him at that particular point in time. Feeling being, you know, his body proportions, his form, you know, how he reacts, and kind of the attitude. He's got a joy for life, and he just really enjoys having fun. So now you'll see me do something a little bit different. Instead of using the lasso tool, I've switched up to the paint bucket, and very similar to what Procreate does, Clip Studio Paint's been doing for quite a while. You know, in Procreate, you take the you know, the color, and you can go over and just color drop in side of the you know, inside of the color section that you're in, and then you reference a layer, and that's exactly what I've done. So I've referenced a particular layer, and every layer or every color that goes in references the sketch layer, so that's why you see it won't completely fill inside of that particular sketch layer. And I like to keep things, again, very separated, which is something that I do, especially since I'll be transferring this over to Photoshop. Now, I did indicate in the description Clip Studio Paint and Photoshop. So once I get the color blocked in and I get the shadows blocked in, I'm going to talk here in just a couple minutes about exactly what I'm doing. Then I'm going to head over to Photoshop for the final time-lapse wrap-up, and I will do just a slight bit of narration in there as well. I have created entire illustrations in Clip Studio Paint, and that's completely possible. You know, I've got, like I said, a myriad of brushes that I utilize. But for color block in, that's where this particular program really has its strength. And I could stop. I could stop at any particular point, you know, after I go in and do things to my satisfaction. You see, just a second ago, I had kind of a hiccup where I was in OBS Studio, because even though, you know, from your perception, these illustrations don't take that long, I mean, sometimes they do. You know, sometimes I walk away and I don't work on it for a couple days, and sometimes I come back just because of work schedules and whatnot. But overall, I think it gives you a broad kind of a stroke of exactly how I use Clip Studio Paint and Photoshop. Photoshop, to me, is more of a detailed program, and that's what I'm going to be switching to here in just a moment after I describe exactly what I'm doing in Clip Studio Paint. So let's go ahead and get over there and see what we're doing. And you thought this was going to be a completely time-lapse video. However, I decided just to kind of jump in here really quick and show you where I'm at. I'm working in Clip Studio Paint today, and the reason why is I love the way Clip Studio does things. First, I love the program. I love the variety. I love the brushes. I love the way that it treats layer masks and layers, and I just overall really enjoy what it has to offer as a program. A lot of people have complained recently about the subscription model, and the reality is that's the world we live in now. You know, it's very hard for the software makers to basically prohibit their software from being pirated or, you know, sold on the black market. So what they've done is they've transferred over to a subscription model to help fund their business model a little bit better. And with that, you know, I don't really see, as far as it, you know, goes, as being a huge negative. You know, if it's $10, if it's $9, if it's $3 a month, whatever it is, I'm still going to use the program and enjoy all of its features. Now, I do think you can purchase it as a one-time and then not get any more updates. But that being said, you know, I'm sure that some of the updates will be fantastic. You would hope. Anyway, so what I'm doing right now is you see that I've got my Yeti sketch, and I kind of explained earlier on in the process as far as, you know, my sketch layer. We're going to bring him up to the top here. We're going to move him over to the left-hand side to just kind of give you a better perspective of where I came from. Very loose sketch, focusing on the gesture, focusing on the weight, focusing on the attitude, the excitement, and the storytelling aspect of the illustration. Then I moved on to the line. Now, as you see, between this one and the final line work right here, you can see that I've refined things quite a bit. And the problem that I've always had with my work is a lot of times the sketch will be a little bit more lively than the actual illustration itself. And I've tried to alleviate that over the years by adding variation of line weight. And that variation of line weight really is just to, let's find a good color pencil. I like that one right there. The rough pencil is there just to accentuate the weight, the form, the attitude of the piece. I don't particularly like to trace, but going back over things and, you know, kind of keeping things a little lively is really what my goal is. And, you know, you might see me come back time and time again, and I'll come back and I'll show little elements here, little folds there that really help kind of, again, tell that story. As far as color palette goes, I wanted it to be more of a muted color palette. I didn't want to go in and really give huge, bright colors. You know, we go back to this piece right here, which is the same character, and you can see that this one tells a very jovial, seasonal, happy time, which is fine, and that's what I was really going for, and show a little bit of action with a little bit of snow here and there. And then we come back to this one, and I'm still in that process of figuring out exactly what the overall mood, but I didn't want the colors to come out and smack you, because, again, this is, you know, telling that story and thinking of overall presentation of the piece. I want his clothes to be a little bit more worn. I want them to be a little bit more homely. Homely being, not homely, I'm trying to think of the word, more friendly. And a lot of times these colors right here, even though they aren't smack your face drab, they're kind of in the middle. And that particular hue, these hues being opposites, again, has a balance. And then I throw that green in there to kind of balance with this green down here. And, you know, I wanted, again, that orange to kind of balance off with that blue. So you can see the color palette, even though I'm not a colorist, really has that balance that tells the story of the illustration. So what I'm going to do now, you see over here on the right hand side, you see I've got everything in my layers. You know, I wanted to go in and do a little bit better layer compositing of the colors and stuff like that, but in Clip Studio Paint, since I'm on my Surface device, I don't have my quick keys set up, and whenever you fold the Surface device in half, basically you lose the keyboard. So I didn't have any reference layers or anything like that to go in and layer things on top like I would, you know, if I were to go in and create a layer mask in Photoshop. So what I'm probably going to end up doing is go ahead and going over to Photoshop, because again, I have a ton of brushes over there that I really love. And what you're going to see me do is I'm going to go in, so let's say, since I've got this on layer transparency, I'm just going to show you an example really quick. So we're going to go to purple. And I'm going to do this over here in Photoshop. You know, but what I might do, just for giggles, is I've got that on top, and I'm going to change the transparency over to multiply. And I go in and I just start drawing in my shadows. So let's go ahead and choke that back just a little bit. And you can see very quickly that I can get in there and start, you know, doing some really cool shadow effects. Just, you know, literally all I'm doing is trying to find out where my shadows lie. You know, thinking about the shapes, thinking about the forms. And figuring out where the light source is. So the light source is probably going to be overhead, a little bit this way, right here. So that brightest is going to be shining right here, so you're going to have a shadow underneath. Right, you're going to have a little bit of shadow underneath here, right here. So you can see this methodology really is quick, and it gives me an idea of where things are without having to go in. It's, again, I talk about that road, you know, I've talked about this before on my channel, that roadmap of where I'm supposed to be going. You know, maybe put some folds in here, I don't know. Okay, it goes like this. Maybe that's a little bit too much. Okay, it goes like that. I don't know. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm in that area where I could do a lot of experimentation. And a lot of times it may look like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing. And in effect, I kind of don't in you know, in the grand scheme of exactly what I'm trying to accomplish with this piece. It is very liquid and fluid, meaning I'll go in and I'll change things, and I'll change the way they look, and maybe I'll put a different shadow here, and I don't like that shadow, and I'll change it. And that's what's great about artwork. And you see very quickly I get a nice understanding of where those shadows are going to go without having to ruin any of my drawing, because I've got it on that separate layer. So maybe he's got a little shadow right there from his arm, comes down. Right. Even though, here we go like this. Yeah, I kind of like that. Yeah. Since light comes up, hits here, hits here. So then we're going to have that in shadow. And we're going to come down here. And that's going to cast down like that. And this is part of the experimentation process. Even though I've got a lot done, I still haven't really figured out where, you know, I want a lot of that emotion to go. So again, you look here and you see all, and I've talked about this before, allowing certain aspects of your drawing to point up to the focus. So the focus is going to be right here. So I've got these opposing lines right here, but I do have this pointing at this direction, he's pointing up, so this whole interaction right here is where a lot of the focus is going to go. Okay, so now I've added a layer, and I'm going to go and I'm going to select that color, and I'm going to go a little bit brighter. And what I can do is, since I've got this particular the lasso fill, so anything that I draw and release is going to be filled with whatever color that I have. So I can just literally, really quickly, I can go in and do stuff like this. You know. And that's what's great about Clip Studio Paint. And even though you can do this kind of thing in Photoshop, a lot of times, just the way that Clip Studio Paint is designed, it's just easy for me to do this, because I think I can do a lasso and then have it fill in Photoshop. I'm pretty sure you can. But this, it's just set up in a way that really talks to me. So now, since I've got my shadow layer in, I've got a little bit of a highlight layer in the back. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create another layer. And again, this is still the experimentation process. So I'm going to warm that up just a little bit. I'm not going to put so much color hue in there. And then we're going to go overlay. And you can see that's more or less a highlight. And what I can do now is I can choke that back, all the way to 40%. And I can just start putting in some general highlights. And you see how that automatically starts really brightening things up quite a bit. And like I'd said before, this is literally just an experimentation process that I use as I move through the illustration. And then, like I said before, I am working on my Surface device, so I don't want to say inhibited by a few things, because I'm not. I mean, if I were to transfer over to like a tablet or something like that, I would have a lot more quick keys. I do have my quick key remote, but again, it's programmed in such a way for like sketching and drawing. I don't have it set up to where I can, do a lot of the things that I would normally do. Yeah, and you see very quickly, without having to go in and do quote unquote rendering, I can get that roadmap in to kind of determine where things go. And it gives me a better understanding. And I'd probably take a screen grab of this and put it to the side as like a color or a value study, a color and value study, and then I would use that to go back in. And then, so we've got a shadow layer right here. We've got my highlight layer there. And then we've got a little bit of a highlight layer in the back. So we'll go back to the base and see how easy that was. Clip Studio Paint, what a fantastic program. Anyway, let's go ahead and back on the time lapse. Let's wrap this illustration up as I progress through, and you'll see me, get the things finished, and we'll do a wrap in the end. Okay? Enjoy. Okay, so I just wanted to show you really quick before I unleash the time lapse on you with the music. So right now, just like I showed, I'm blocking in my shadows. Again, simple shapes, not getting too wild. I decided something a little bit different on this illustration, something that I didn't anticipate on. And that's what's great about art. We all have different methodologies of how we do things, and sometimes it's good to step out of your proverbial comfort box. And even though I've done watercolor before, I haven't done a ton of watercolor, and it is my wish and my I don't want to say wish, it's sort of like a vision of how I want my style to develop. And you see, I went ahead and I got a whole bunch of brand new watercolor brushes. Now I do have existing watercolor brushes, but they weren't really doing the trick, and I didn't want to do this in Procreate, even though I have a huge amount of experience in Procreate. I wanted to keep this on the desktop environment, so I got some watercolor brushes, and that's what I'm doing. I'm literally kind of experimenting with each brush and determining what's working for me, what's not. You can see that I kind of have frustrations, and then eventually I land on a couple brushes, and that's typically what happens. I'll buy an entire brush pack, and I might use 3 of them out of the brush pack, and even though a lot of them don't go to waste, I might use them here and there. Typically I'll grab 1 or 2 that really work for me and speak to me, and that's where I land. Yeah, so watercolor. Why do I like watercolor? Watercolor has a childlike look to it that I really love. I love that hand-done feel. I love textures. I love putting all those things inside of my artwork that really tell a story. And even though I can do really polished, painterly stuff, I don't lean towards that. Anything that looks hand-done and really accentuates that hand-done quality is something that I will gravitate towards, and that's exactly where I'm developing my style at this particular point in time. That might change in the next 5 years. It could change in 2 years. It could change next month. But right now, I'm in love with that hand-done, painterly, watercolory, textured feel that a lot of artwork out there has. And even though, I say that a lot of artwork has out there, I'm always endeavoring to separate my style from somebody else's style and do my own thing. So, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and just unleash the time lapse on you for the remainder of the artwork. And again, Photoshop is one of those programs. It's like the Swiss Army knife of the illustration and graphic design world. You can do so much in it, and I like to work in layers because I can get the effects desired. And the different brushes and the rendering engine and the speed, and then you can save this particular file as different file types, which is great because I can drag it into other programs. And yeah, you see me, I kind of go back and forth between the watercolor brush high, or the H3, large brush 3, and some of those other watercolor brushes. I can get into some of the bleeds and some of that other stuff, but right now this is like the first illustration that I've done with these brushes. And I believe the creator of these brushes, Adon, or I forget what his name is, I'd have to look up. Alden Farias, I believe his name is. I'm going to embarrass myself here if I don't look it up. Yeah, because I definitely recommend his brushes. Get him over on Gumroad. Hold on, I'm looking it up right now. Okay. No, that's not what I wanted. Gumroad. OAD. I've purchased a lot of brushes from Gumroad. Okay, his name is Adelson Farias, and he is an illustrator that really, I love his style, watercolory, childlike, his characters, and I've always loved his work. I mean, I'm just in awe of some of the stuff that he does. I'm just so impressed, and I love his watercolor stuff. So, Adelson Farias, or Ferris, I believe. Look it up. Go grab some of his brushes. Give him some love. His brushes are on the pricey side, but definitely worth it. I think I paid $18 for the brush pack, and I got quite a few. And I'll use these for years. I definitely want to promote somebody that makes good stuff. Yeah, so let's go ahead and put you on time lapse, and I'll see if I can't do a wrap-up video in the end, okay? Enjoy! And that pretty much wraps up the illustration. So you can see, and I give you a little bit of an insight as to the processes that I use inside of these two programs, Clip Studio Paint and Photoshop. These are just tools, right? I got to express to you, because I get so many questions about what brush do you use? What program is that? What is this? What is that? And I think that it kind of gives a misnomer and a misdirection as to the successes involved in creating an image like this, right? Images like this have progression, right? You start out with an idea in your brain, or you see something in the world that really catches your eye, and then you kind of develop it in your brain, and then you put it down on paper or into the digital environment. And then it develops, right? You start out with simple shapes, then you go into the story in your brain and the characterization and how you're going to draw the character and what the character is going to be doing, and what's the season, and what's the time of day. And all these things kind of get wrapped up into an idea that you finally put down on a piece of paper, and then it gets executed as a sketch. And that's what you guys saw. From there, I went into kind of what I call technical production mode, where I refine the line, or refine the shape, or refine the character, and then I block in the color, and I change things according to how my mind's eye sees them and develops. From there, it gets put into the programs that I think fit it the best in that moment with the brushes. And then in the end, I've created an illustration that is unique and something that I'm, happy with. Is it finished? I think that I could probably spend a load more time on the illustration. But the reality is that sometimes there's a difference between being perfect and being finished, right? Yeah, that's kind of a statement you should say a lot in your drawing career and your illustration career is finished, not perfect. Because a lot of times we get so wrapped up in, oh, it's got to be perfect, it's got to be this, it's got to be that, that it doesn't. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be finished to the level to which you put it out there and get a reaction. Art is subjective, and a lot of people will look at it and say, oh, it's terrible, it's this and that. And that's not something that can be taken lightly, because a lot of people can't handle that criticism. And that's why I think I get a lot of times people asking me about the programs, because they want to emulate what they see, and they want to utilize the same programs that I'm using, the same brush settings, and a lot of those same things. And I think that's fantastic. Emulation is something that I encourage, because it just like if you were to watch somebody that shoots really good basketballs into a hoop, you kind of look at their body language and their form and how they do things, and then you emulate that. The same in martial arts, the same in some of those other physical conditioning genres. Art, again, is subjective, and it takes time to develop these things. And don't get discouraged. Don't get discouraged if you don't have Photoshop. There's a lot of free programs. Don't get discouraged if you don't have the brushes that I have, because there are a lot of brushes out there, and you can make your own brushes. Don't get discouraged if you don't, get it on the best, you don't get it on the first try, or the second try, or the third try, or even the 50th try. Art is in development. I'm constantly developing, and so are you. It's part of who we are as people. We're constantly learning. I think I heard somebody say, 10,000 drawings to get one good one. You really need to ask yourself, what is your standard? What is your level of good? I've seen terrible illustration get produced, stuff that doesn't adhere to the principles of art and design, that doesn't have good form, that has, it doesn't look good, the characterizations are off, the anatomy's off. But that's what's great about art, right? I've been traditionally trained to have certain standards and certain levels and do things at a certain level. But the reality is we all are different. And even if some of the illustration out there isn't fantastic, you should definitely look at it as being art, because art in and of itself, an expression of humanity, is beautiful. I definitely encourage you guys to go out and draw something, create something, paint something, sculpt something that creates something from you, right? I think that there's so much going on in this world that we really have lost sight of what makes people beautiful. And that's, their humanity and their ability to write songs and create art and express themselves in a way that makes others feel a certain way and evoke emotion, you know. I definitely think that we should be doing more of that. Lots more of that. So hopefully you enjoyed this video and you got a little peek into the brain, you know, the brain avenues and the brain capacities and the different ways that I think of doing things. Did I explain things in a super clear way? Probably not, but you know, I'm still working at this and still trying to get, you know, my words to match up with my brain, because a lot of times the brain, it goes so fast and my mouth can only keep up so quickly with things, and especially whenever I'm drawing. To film something, to draw something, to narrate something, and to make it look halfway decent, sometimes those things kind of get jumbled up. So hopefully I didn't jumble you guys up too bad today. But thank you guys for watching. Lots of videos coming out. I've got 2 new reviews coming out soon of products that are in the marketplace that are really popular, and hopefully I'll be adding some other things as well. So thank you guys, and we'll see you soon, okay?